The second panelist session at the fourth annual convening of the Impact Investing Foundation (IIF) looked at the theme identifying and unlocking impact potentials in Nigerian enterprises. It was moderated by Thelma Ekio, managing partner of SME.ng, is an impact investor which facilitates accelerated outcomes especially for women. In her opening, Ekio welcomed the subsidence of the initial fury of the coronavirus pandemic, which had had such a profoundly adverse impact on lives, livelihoods, and businesses, including impact enterprises across the nation, especially during the course of the year 2020. She, however, lamented the fact that there was still quite a bit of ambiguity, if not outright confusion, as to what impact investing really is, and how it differs from, say, philanthropy and other forms of social investment. For the purpose of clarity, therefore, she sought from each of her panelists a definition of the term and how it relates to the work of their respective organizations.
And so if you have investors who are looking for commercial returns, they don't necessarily want you to talk about impact investing. And even as you're going out and raising capital from investors, if you talk about impact investing, they oftentimes think you mean below market returns.
And so when we look at investments, it's not just the financials, the numbers, but how are we really changing the way business is being done so that it impacts lives of a broad base of different stakeholders.
One of the ethos we have in FX is that we locate our warehouses close to the production sites, that's to the farmers. And so during the COVID period, it was easy for the farmers to still keep doing their production and take their commodities to the warehouse, and they would still get paid.
If we can really underline and reinforce the fact that we care about keeping you healthy, keeping you safe, I think that will translate, and that is translating into a more productive workforce.
In view of the many areas of need in Nigeria, the moderator said the potential foreign impact investor might be forgiven for not being quite sure which area of need he or she ought to prioritize for optimum outcomes, both in terms of healthy market returns as well as a societal good. Mr. Adeosun of Kuramo Capital was emphatic as to the two critical sectors foreign impact capital should place at the very top of its investment bucket list: power and food security. The other panelists added a few more items such as the healthcare and education, and gave the reasons why and the factors that should determine such an investment decision.
We accept the constraints placed on us by grantors because that cost of capital is free. But when we're asked to provide all of these super detailed pieces of information, specifically from my perspective, that often are about outputs and not outcomes, about the number of farmers trained or the number of people that you talk to, but not about what actually happened with the farmers that you're working with or with the constituents that you're working with, right? Did you actually increase their incomes? Did you actually improve their health outcomes?
The way I think about it is there are some basics that you need to be alive. So that's food, water, and sanitation. That's housing, healthcare. These are the things that actually keep people living their life. But then beyond that, you need to think about how can somebody actually thrive and grow. So then you have to start looking at how are they actually going to be employed? What about education, mobility? What about creativity, which I think is such an important part of life. So I don't think I can pick just one.
And for us, we are focused on food and agriculture. I think that's really where we feel we can make the mark. And for many different reasons, there's food security that I think it's very important. But it's also just taking a step back and saying, separate from the challenges, how do you match that challenge with the opportunity? And we have a very large population that's going to add probably close to 70 million people over the next 10 years. How are we going to feed these people? The people need to eat. The food has to come from somewhere. Are we going to import this food, or are we going to build businesses that can actually serve the needs of these consumers?
So if I hear correctly, I think everyone agrees that you have to measure impact. It's how it's done. And I think one of the contributions that IIF and the National Advisory Board can make to this whole conversation is, context-specific indicators.
One of the major issues discussed was on how to measure impact, especially in the medium and long terms, who should determine the yardstick, and whether there ought to be a universal set of indices.